They shoved Bianca to her knees in the dirt, right in the middle of the border market where humans pretended not to stare. Someone had tied her wrists with plastic zip ties that cut into skin already mapped with old scars. A hunter in a sun-bleached cap lifted her chin with the butt of a rifle like she was a stray dog that needed sorting. "Spy," he said. "Always here on moon nights. Always smelling like the trees." "I work the night shift at the clinic," Bianca rasped. "I patch up your hands when they split from hauling traps. I don't even like the woods." But the crowd had come for a spectacle. Phones raised, whispers sharpening into blades. She could feel the shame soak into her bones the way cold sinks into tile. The worst part wasn't the zip ties or the dust on her tongue. It was the blank in her head where her life should have been. 100 small missing minutes stitched together like bad quilting. No reason to be afraid of wolves. No reason to dream of amber eyes and blood on stone. And yet she did. Sirens Dopplered, then cut. Vans rolled in with stenciled logos nobody recognized. Men in gray stepped out carrying tranquilizers instead of cuffs. Not police, something else. The hunter's mouth tightened. "Transfer," one of the gray coats said, flashing paper. "She belongs to the border unit now." "I don't belong to anyone," Bianca said, but the zip ties answered for her. The gray coat touched the back of her neck like he was checking a barcode. His gloved thumb paused over one scar at the base of her skull, as if it matched a rumor. "Tag her," he told the others. "If she runs, drop her." Wind came off the pines in a single hard breath. It carried a scent that wasn't wind at all. Smoke and rain and something alive that curled low in Bianca's stomach, hot and wrong and familiar. The market went quiet the way rooms go quiet when a principal walks in. Heads turned toward the road that led into the forest. A motorcycle black as a wet stone cut through the crowd without slowing. The rider braked in front of Bianca so close dust stung her eyes. He swung off the bike like the pavement had been waiting for him and took off his helmet. He was tall. Not handsome, dangerous. Hair clipped close, jaw shadowed. Eyes the color of old whiskey that had watched too many nights burn. The gray coat stiffened, and even the hunter lowered his rifle by instinct he probably didn't know he had. "Alpha," someone breathed. Not a scream. A prayer. He didn't look at the men in gray. He looked at Bianca like she'd stepped out of a grave. Like the world had made a mistake and he was here to correct it. Something in his stare pinned her in place harder than the zip ties ever could. "You took your time," he said, not to her, to the universe. His voice scraped like a match-finding flame. Then he stepped closer, slow enough she could have flinched away, and inhaled once, the way a storm tastes the air before it breaks. "Release her," he told the gray coats. "We have orders." "You have the wrong king," he said, and the words were soft, but people moved anyway. The hunter swallowed. The gray coat with the gloves hesitated like he wanted to keep a piece of his pride and then cut the ties because he wanted to keep his throat more. Blood crept back into Bianca's hands in furious pins and needles. "I don't know you," she said, because it was the only weapon she had. He didn't blink. "Brian." He said it like a verdict delivered. "And you do." Laughter flickered at the edges of the crowd. A woman snorted. The hunter recovered enough courage to sneer. "She's human," he said. "If you claim her, you break your own laws." Brian turned then, all that quiet focus switching from Bianca to the circle of men who thought they ran this patch of dirt. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't bare his teeth. He only stood there with the weight of a mountain on his shoulders and the certainty of someone who never learned to lose. "The law," he said, "was written to protect what's ours." The gray coat started to argue. The hunter lifted his rifle again because bravado grows best in groups. Someone jostled Bianca from behind. She stumbled forward and her palms hit the hot metal of the bike. A spark leapt under her skin, sharp, electric, wrong. The air tasted like iron. The blank place in her head shivered and split, and for a heartbeat she saw stone stairs washed in moonlight and her own hands red to the wrists. A man shouting her name. Not Bianca. Something older. Back away from the woman, Brian told the hunter. Or what? The last of the light slid off the roofs and shadows pooled together in the spaces between boots. Some animal part of the crowd felt the shift and backed up without meaning to. Bianca's pulse climbed her throat. Her skin prickled, every hair listening. Brian stepped into her space, close enough that she felt the heat of him through the dust and noise. The scent from the pines was on him. Smoke and rain and that impossible familiarity that made her chest tight. His gaze held her like a hand at the small of her back, steadying and terrifying. "Look at me," he said. Not a command. A bridge. Bianca wanted to tell him no. She wanted to tell him she wasn't anyone's anything. But her eyes lifted, because some part of her had been waiting years to obey this one single thing. The world narrowed to amber and breath. Something inside her answered. It wasn't language. It was a door swinging wide. Pain lanced the scar at the base of her skull. Heat surged across her face, and for an instant she saw the market through different sight. Edges brighter, hearts louder, the gray coats nothing but meat and fear. Gasps broke around her like dropped plates. A child screamed. The hunter took 2 steps back and forgot to keep his finger off the trigger. Bianca didn't feel the ground anymore. He felt the pull. The bond she didn't believe in. The one nobody had warned her would wear the shape of a man she didn't remember. Brian's hand hovered a breath from her cheek, not touching. "There you are," he said, voice roughened by something like relief and ruin at once. "I knew you weren't dead." Bianca blinked and the world snapped back into color. Dust. Phones. Guns. The scent of pine. She jerked away, heart a fist. "Don't touch me," she said, and the edge in it was pure survival. Brian didn't touch her. He turned his head half an inch and every armed man on the street took a step back like someone had pulled them on strings. "You don't know me," Bianca said, speaking to him and to the hole in her own memory. "And I don't know you." "Your eyes," whispered the woman who'd laughed, not laughing now. They glowed. Just for a heartbeat. Gold caught in a human face. Chapter 1. They didn't let her ride the motorcycle. Instead, Bianca was shoved into the back of a black van that smelled of leather, antiseptic, and wet fur. The men in gray kept their eyes averted, as if one glance at the Alpha King could freeze them solid. The ride felt endless. Bianca pressed her wrists against her knees, feeling the raw cut from the zip ties. Every bump of the road jostled her bones and shook loose questions she didn't want. Who was he? Why did he look at her like he owned pieces of her she'd never given? Why did her scars burn where his eyes had lingered? When the van doors finally opened, cold mountain air slapped her face. The fortress rose out of the dark like a scar carved into stone. Towers, iron gates, banners fluttering with silver wolves on black cloth. Not a palace, not a home. A warning. Soldiers in dark uniforms lined the courtyard, heads bowed slightly as Brian passed. To them he wasn't just a man, he was the law in skin and bone. Bianca stumbled trying to keep pace. Chains had replaced her zip ties. Symbolic, she realized. Not because she needed restraint, but because he wanted everyone to see it. The crowd of wolves and courtiers watched her like she was a prophecy dragged in from the dirt. Inside the throne hall, torchlight flickered across vaulted ceilings. The room smelled of smoke, iron, and something wild pulsing under the stone. Bianca's heart thudded in her ears. She had never been this deep in the woods, never crossed this line. Brian dropped his helmet on the steps of the dais and turned slowly, his eyes landing on her with the weight of an avalanche. He didn't sit on the throne. He stood in front of it like a wall. "This is her," he said to the room. His voice carried without effort, low and absolute. "I lost mate." Gasps rippled through the counselors. A woman with iron-gray hair sneered. "Impossible. He reeks of human." To claim her would break the bond between king and pack. Another counselor spat on the floor. "If you bring a human into our court as queen, you break every law the moon laid down." Bianca froze. Her. The words twisted through her like barbed wire. She wanted to laugh, scream, and run all at once. She opened her mouth, then stopped because Brian's gaze pinned her in place again. "You said you don't know me," he told her quietly for her ears alone. "Then I'll remind you." The council erupted in argument, shouts of law, loyalty, betrayal. Wolves snarled in their throats though none shifted. Bianca's stomach knotted. She didn't belong here. She wanted to shout that this was madness, that she was just a medic who had nightmares she couldn't explain. But then Brian moved, fast, smooth, too close. His hand shot out, catching the wrist she tried to hide behind her back. He turned her palm upward. Gasps spread through the chamber. There, etched into her skin like an old burn, was a faint crescent scar glowing faintly gold in the torchlight. Bianca ripped her hand back, stumbling, heat clawing up her arm. "That's not." "It's the mate mark," Brian said, voice hard. "You can deny me, Bianca. But you can't deny what's carved into your own flesh." Her breath caught. Her scars, her gaps, the dreams. None of it made sense, but the way the council stared told her they believed him. Believed her. The iron-gray woman sneered again. "Then test her. If she is truly the lost queen, let her survive the rite." "What rite?" Bianca demanded. But no one answered. Not even Brian. He only stared at her with that same ruin in his eyes, as if he'd found the thing he wanted most and knew it would destroy him. The torches guttered, and somewhere deep in the mountain, a wolf howled once, long and low. Bianca's stomach turned to ice. She wasn't going home. She wasn't even sure she had one anymore. The room they put Bianca in was not a cell, but it might as well have been. Stone walls, a narrow slit of window, a torch guttering with smoke. The mountain itself seemed to press against her ribs. A soft knock and a girl slipped inside with a basin of water. Brown-eyed, careful, her hands trembled even when she tried to hide it. "I'm Lily," she whispered. "Omega servant. I was told to clean your wounds." Bianca pulled her wrists back. "I don't need help." "You do," Lily said quietly. "And if the council sees blood, they'll call it weakness." Bianca let her because pride was useless against infection. Lily's touch was gentle as she dabbed at the angry red cuts. "Why are you helping me?" "Because if you are who he says you are, we'll all need you to survive the rite." The word made Bianca's stomach knot. Right. Another rule she didn't understand. The door opened again, this time without a knock. A man in a slate-black suit entered, followed by guards. His smile was sharp, his eyes pale. "Bianca," he said smoothly. "I'm Marcus, advisor to the king." "Advisor or leash?" Bianca asked. He ignored the barb. "You cannot remain here disputed. If you are human, the rite will expose it. If you are queen, the rite will confirm it. Choice exists. Consequences also exist." His gaze slid to the scar at the base of her skull. "Memory is such a fragile veil. The rite tears veils." Then he left, leaving the torchlight too steady as if the fire obeyed him. That night, Bianca followed Lily to the baths. Steam rose from stone pools, herbs perfuming the air. For the first time since the market, Bianca's body stopped bracing for impact. Until the door opened again. Brian stepped inside. The Alpha King. He didn't crowd her, he only said, "If you want me gone, say it. I'll stand on the other side of the wall if that's what it takes." "You humiliated me," Bianca shot back. "I claimed you," he corrected. "It cost me, not you." Her throat tightened. "I don't remember you." "I know," he said rough. "But I remember you." He handed her a jar of salve for her wrists. He didn't touch her. And when he turned away, she saw the scar carved across his shoulder, proof that he bled like any man. Before she could push him further, a cry echoed down the corridor. Lily burst in, breathless. A boy fell, kitchen stairs. Bianca ran without thinking. They found him, ankle twisted, face pale. Brian ordered the crowd back, but Bianca knelt fast, her medic's voice steady. "You'll be all right. Hold still." She pressed her hands over the joint. Heat bloomed from her palms. The boy's breathing slowed, pain ebbing. When Bianca pulled away, Lily stared like she'd seen a miracle. Brian only watched, unreadable. "You'll need a wrap," Bianca told the boy. "Tell anyone who argues the Queen said so." The word slipped out before she could stop it. No one laughed. Later, leaning against a window slit, Bianca heard the forest breathe. A howl floated up, not warning but question. In the whisper of the wind she almost heard a name, hers and not hers. Brian's hand closed around her elbow, steady. "You heard it." "I don't know what I heard." "Marcus is stirring the council," he said. "He'll try to move the rite to dawn." "Why rush it?" "Because the longer you're here," Brian said, "the more you become yourself." A bell tolled deep in the fortress, old and low. Lily's face went pale. "That's the council. They're summoning the chamber." Brian's jaw hardened. "Marcus wants the rite at dawn." He looked at Bianca, his voice briefly softer. "You won't face it alone." Bianca's heart pounded, but she lifted her chin. "I'm not yours." His answer was quiet. "That's enough." The bell tolled again, sealing the night with dread. Chapter 3. Dawn climbed the mountain as a thin gray blade. The courtyard below the wolf court filled with bodies and breath plumes. A ring of onlookers pressed close to the stone balustrades. Bianca stood on rough flagstones in borrowed boots and a plain tunic, wrists bandaged with the salve Brian had left. Lily tied the last knot, fingers quick. "You don't have to bow," Lily whispered. "Even if they try to make you." "I wasn't planning to," Bianca said and tried to smile. It cracked at the edges. Drums struck. 3 steady blows that made the fortress hum. Counselors filed onto the raised platform. Iron-gray matriarch Hale, 2 younger alphas with watchful eyes, and Marcus, clean as a knife. Brian appeared last. Armor black as rain. No crown, only a leather cord at his throat, simple as a promise. When he looked at Bianca, the crowd noise thinned, like her heartbeat turned a dial. Matriarch Hale lifted a silver staff. "By our law, a claim must be proved. By wolf, by blood, by will." The tip of the staff kissed stone. "Begin." Servants wheeled out a low table set with ritual things that looked like a surgeon's tray had married an altar. Silver bowl, wolfsbane braided with thyme, a ring of dull metal etched with runes, a knife wrapped in red cloth. Bianca's stomach rolled. Marcus stepped forward, voice carrying. "We will honor tradition. The trial by clause has 3 measures." He ticked them off gracefully like a tutor. "Truth, pain, pack." Short version. Bianca asked Lily without moving her lips. "Truth scent. Wolves can smell lies," Lily breathed. "Pain, contact with silver. Pack, you'll be asked to choose." "Choose what?" Lily didn't answer. Her throat worked. Marcus faced Bianca. "Step into the circle." Bianca stepped. Brian's jaw flexed once, a small flash of muscle, and then was still. Measure 1, truth. Marcus set the wolfsbane braid smoldering. Smoke curled low, sweet then bitter, crawling under Bianca's tongue. 2 enforcers in human skin circled her, pupils blown wide, scenting for falsehood. Marcus asked the old questions, voice smooth. "What is your name?" "Bianca." The enforcer's nostrils flared. One made a small, involuntary sound. Approval or surprise. "Do you stand here as human or wolf?" Bianca swallowed. "I don't know." A ripple went through the crowd. The enforcers glanced at each other, then back at Marcus. They did not snarl. They did not scream liar. Marcus's smile didn't shift. "And do you claim the Alpha King as your mate?" Bianca's spine went ice. The smoke threaded her nerves like needles. She looked at Brian, and his face was the court's mask again, unreadable to anyone who didn't know the line of his mouth when he was trying not to interfere. "No," Bianca said. Wolfsbane bit deeper. The enforcers snapped their heads toward Marcus. One shook himself, uneasy. The other nodded once. Truth then. Not cruelty. Truth. Marcus's eyes cooled. Measure 2. Measure 2, pain. Matriarch Hale unwound the red cloth. The knife beneath was silver, not bright, hungry. Bianca's hands went slick. The matriarch did not hand it to her. She set it on Bianca's palm with ceremonial care. Hold, Hale said. Count to 10 that our mothers might hear you. Do not drop it. Bianca closed her fingers around the handle. Heat rushed up her arm like fire skipping dry brush. By 3, spots crowded her vision. By 6, the scar at the base of her skull burned as if the blade had become a brand. By 8, her knees trembled. Brian moved half a step before he stopped himself. The sound of the crowd blurred. Lily's voice threaded through it, soft as a prayer. Breathe by. Out. At 9, memories flared, stone stairs, blood, a temple mouth yawning like a wound. At 10, Bianca lifted the knife, opened her fingers and set it on the table with hands that shook only after they left the metal. Hale inclined her head the smallest degree. Will enough. Marcus's mouth thinned. Measure 3. Measure 3. The onlookers stirred. Bianca felt the ring tighten not with bodies but with expectation. Marcus gestured, casual as a man calling for tea. 2 guards pushed forward prisoners from opposite sides of the circle. On the left, a young Omega with a torn sleeve, the boy from the kitchen, face gone gray. On the right, a hard-eyed hunter in a border uniform, lip cut, hands bound. The pack suffers when the king's judgment is weak, Marcus said. We test not only pain but principle. Bianca's mouth went dry. What are you doing? Marcus addressed the court, not her. A queen must choose where mercy ends. Will she spend herself on the least of us, or protect the whole by ending a threat? He looked to Hale. As law permits, each presents a cost. Hale's staff struck stone. Explain the costs. Save the Omega, Marcus said smoothly, and the hunter dies. He tipped his head at the bound man. Save the hunter and the Omega bleeds. Mercy offered to the enemy is often paid for by kin. He spread his hands. A lesson our last queen forgot. Bianca's stomach flipped. You want me to pick who lives? Who you save, Marcus corrected. The other meets the consequence the circle determines. Brian's voice cut across the air, low iron. Enough games. Law, Marcus said, not looking at him, is the opposite of games. The crowd leaned in. Lily squeezed the outside of Bianca's forearm once, quick, secret, and then dropped her hand as if she'd been burned. The boy watched Bianca with the fragile hope of someone who had been taught not to hope at all. The hunter met her gaze with contempt that softened into something like curiosity. Bianca tasted wolfsbane smoke and bile. In the clinic she saved whoever bled first. In the market she'd stitched men who'd cursed her name. You're a medic, she told herself. Not a judge. Not a god. I won't choose who dies, she said, voice steady. I'll choose who lives. Marcus smiled like a man appreciating grammar. Do so. Bianca dropped to her knees by the boy. His ankle was wrapped now, but his breath hitched. Panic. Shock setting in. She put her palm on his chest, found the rhythm, matched it. Look at me, she told him, and he did, big eyes drowning. Breathe with me. And hold out. Heat pulsed from her hand. Not dramatic. Not magic in a storybook way. Just warmth, human and relentless. The boy's breathing evened. Color crept back into his mouth. Across the circle, a murmur rose, wolves uneasy at what they could not scent. Marcus sighed softly. And the hunter? Bianca stood, crossed to the bound man. His chin tipped up as if he were walking into a bullet. She took his wrist anyway, fingers over pulse. You'll be processed, she said, loud enough for the court. Questioned. Tried like a man, not bait like a beast. Marcus arched a brow. You presume to commute a sentence? I presume to remind you we're not animals, she said, and let the word we hang. The ring bristled. Wolves in human skin shifted weight, old instincts bristling under politics. Hale's eyes narrowed in thought, not anger. Brian watched without speaking. Only his hand tightened on the rail, veins standing, as if he were physically holding himself back from stepping into the circle and ending this with Fong and Law. Marcus flicked his fingers. Guards hauled the hunter toward the gates. The man twisted to stare at Bianca as if she'd slipped a puzzle piece into the wrong box. The crowd's noise rose, broke, and bent like grass in wind. "Your mercy is expensive," Marcus said. "Who will pay it?" Bianca didn't flinch. "I will." Marcus's smile sharpened. "Then pay now." He lifted his hand. Two enforcers set the dull metal ring on the stones at Bianca's feet. Up close she could see sigils burned into it, lines older than the fortress. Smoke thickened. The world tilted. "Stand inside," Marcus said pleasantly. "Let the ring judge your bond." Bianca stepped into the circle. The metal was cold through the soles of her boots. The air changed, pressure deepening like the hush before a storm breaks. The sigils lit, faint as bruises. Heat hit the base of her skull, a blade of fire sliding under old scar tissue. She swayed. "Look at me," Brian said, voice reaching her like a hand. "Anchor here." Bianca found his eyes. Amber steady. The ring pushed harder. Memories wavered up. Moon on stone, a young man with blood on his mouth whispering her not name, and the clang of a gate, a sorcerer's hand pressed to her neck. Pain flared and flared again. She didn't look away. The sigils jumped bright, then brighter, then went white. The smell of wolfsbane burned to metal. Bianca's knees buckled. Brian moved, too fast, too public, and was suddenly at the edge of the ring, one palm outstretched, not touching, his face naked with something like terror. The circle spat a lash of light at his hand. He held his ground. The light died. Bianca sucked air like water. The ring's glow sank to a sullen pulsing, as if it had been forced to accept a verdict it didn't like. Around them, the courtyard's noise slammed back into her skull. Shouts, snarls, a laugh choked off halfway. Hale's staff struck stone once in shock. Marcus's smile had vanished. "Interesting," he said softly. "It recognizes something." "Say queen," Brian said, voice low and lethal. "Not yet," Marcus returned. "One more measure exists. Witness." He snapped his fingers. A hooded figure stepped from the arch of the hall. Robes dark, hands pale, presence like winter. The smoke pressed toward them as if it had found its maker. Lily's fingers found Bianca's sleeve and pinched, a warning. "Which?" The figure lifted her head. Eyes the color of old snow. Bianca's scar went molten. The world slid sideways. "Hello, child," the sorceress said, voice a knife through silk. "Do you remember the temple where you begged me to make you forget?" Bianca's breath left her. Chapter 4. The courtyard had gone silent enough to hear pine needles shift on the mountainside. Bianca stood inside the ring, her skin still buzzing from the light that had clawed at her bones. The hooded woman's words hung over her like falling stone. "You begged me to make you forget." "No," Bianca said, her voice breaking on the edge of disbelief. "I never." The sorceress pushed back her hood. Pale hair braided with black thread fell across her shoulder, her face sharp with age but not weakness. "You did," she said. "The night of your awakening, blood dripping from your hands, you looked me in the eyes and said, 'Take it away. Take all of it.' And I did." Gasps rippled through the wolves gathered around the platform. Counselors leaned forward, hungry for scandal. Marcus smiled like a man who had just pulled the last card from his sleeve. Bianca's breath stumbled. The flashes she'd been having, stone stares, a boy's voice, blood that wouldn't wash away, suddenly felt less like dreams and more like fragments of a bargain she couldn't remember making. Brian moved. He stepped down from the dais, his boots ringing hard against the stone, eyes amber fire. "You twisted her will," he said to the sorceress. "No bond would sever by choice. You broke law the moment you touched her mind." The woman tilted her head. I preserved her life. You would have died that night and your precious mate with you. Tell me, Alpha, would you rather her corpse or her silence? The crowd stirred. A few wolves muttered assent. Others bristled. The split was visible and Marcus was watching it like a man mapping fault lines. Bianca pressed a hand to her skull. The scar throbbed hot, memory shards clawing to surface. Brian's face younger, bloody, her own mouth whispering please. Her knees threatened to buckle. Brian's voice cut through the haze, low but iron. Look at me, Bianca. Not her. She did. And for a moment the noise dulled. He wasn't smiling, wasn't soft. But his gaze was steady enough to keep her from falling. Marcus stepped forward. So we agree then. She chose to abandon the bond. What clearer proof that she cannot be queen? A mate who runs is no mate at all. No, Brian said, the single word snapping like a banner in wind. The bond never broke. I felt her alive every day of these years. What she chose was survival under your poison. He looked directly at Marcus. And you profited from her absence. The courtyard hissed like a kettle. The accusation wasn't proof, but it was spark on dry grass. Marcus's smile twitched. Hale lifted her staff to still the murmurs. Enough. The law demands judgment. She looked down at Bianca. Speak. Do you claim the bond, or do you deny it? The circle burned under Bianca's boots. Her throat closed. She wanted to scream that she didn't know, that she couldn't decide on memories stitched together like rags. Every gaze in the fortress speared her. The sorceress leaned in, voice soft but meant to carry. Deny it and you live free. Claim it and you drown in his war. Choose wisely. Bianca's pulse hammered. She saw Lily at the edge of the crowd, small hands clenched, eyes wide with hope. She saw Brian, unmoving, scarred, the one person who had not asked her for a performance but for truth. Bianca's voice cracked. Her chest felt too small for the decision. Before she could finish, a horn split the morning. Wolves stiffened, ears pricked. From the outer wall a guard shouted, sharp, panicked. Hunters! They've breached the border. Chaos surged. Wolves shifted, half-formed, the crowd spilling. Hale slammed her staff against stone, trying to restore order, but the noise drowned her. Brian's hand was suddenly at Bianca's arm, firm but not cruel. Inside, he said. Now. Bianca tried to dig her heels in. The trial ends when I say, he growled and pulled her from the circle just as the sorceress's smile sharpened like a blade in the smoke. Chapter 5. The horn blast fractured into shouts. Wolves in human skin flooded the courtyard, some half-shifted, claws ripping seams. Arrows rattled against the outer wall. The air turned metallic with silver dust. Bianca coughed and tasted wolfsbane on her tongue. Brian's hand tightened on her arm as he pulled her through the side arch. Inside, he said. North Rampart. Lily darted to keep up, skirts gripped in both hands. Hunters came from the gorge. Someone opened the sluice gate. Marcus, Brian said, not looking back. They climbed a narrow stair that knifed up the wall. Guards pounded past carrying shields that shone dull like river stones. At the top, wind slapped Bianca's cheeks raw. Below, the forest had vomited men in gray and green. Not border drunks, organized with harnesses and riot masks, firing bolts that hissed where they landed. Silver-tipped, a captain muttered, flinging a shield to a soldier. Masks against wolfsbane gas. New toys. Brian did not bark orders. He gave them as if they'd already been followed. Archers high, break the rope on the eastern ladder. Shield wall with gaps, let them funnel and fail. He glanced at Lily. You're not a fighter. I can run messages, she said, already gone. A bolt sang. Brian's arm came up, too late for Bianca and right on time for himself. The tip buried in the meat of his shoulder with a wet, mean sound. Pain carved his face open for one beat. He snapped the shaft with his free hand and flung it aside. Bianca's throat made a sound she didn't recognize. You're hit. Not you, he said, and pushed her behind the crenellation as another volley hissed overhead. Chaos contracted into the size of Bianca's body. The stone at her spine, Brian's shoulder inches from her face, blood darkening leather. She reached before she could think, palm flat over the wound. Heat bucked under her hand, his, then hers, then both. The scent rolling off him, wet pine, smoke, rain, filled her head like air in drowning lungs. Don't, he started. Quiet, she said, voice low and pressed. Heat surged from her palm into muscle. Not clean healing. This wasn't a clinic and she wasn't a miracle. But the bleed slowed, the silver burn hissed less, his breath evened enough to hold steady. His eyes cut to her, startled and reverent. It was there and gone. Anchor on me, he said softer. If the smoke gets in your head. It already lives there, she muttered. A grappling hook clanged into the merlin beside them. Brian moved in a blur, hauled the rope up hand over fist, and yanked a hunter into open air. The man dropped with a sound Bianca would hear later when the corridor was quiet. Down, a soldier bellowed. Grenade-shaped canisters arced. Two clattered on the rampart stones, spitting gray haze. Wolves retreated, hacking, eyes watering. Bianca's vision smeared. Her scar went white-hot. Through the haze came a sound thin as thread. Anne. Her knees sagged. Brian's hand found the back of her neck, not harsh, steady, his thumb right over the scar. Stay with me. Stop saying that like I'm yours, she said, but the fight had no teeth. His touch grounded her like a palm on an earthquake table. Lily skidded back with a bundle of damp cloths. Soak them, cover your mouths. She shoved one at Bianca. Breathe through it. To Brian, the east ladder fell. The west. Hold, he said. We funnel then break. Marcus appeared as if conjured by spite, immaculate amid grit. The rite is incomplete, he announced over the wind and war. You endanger law by diverting to battle. We endanger the living if I indulge your theater, Brian said without turning. Marcus's eyes flicked to Bianca, calculating. Hunters wanted the border, not the crown. Strange they climb this wall. He let it hang like a baited hook. Bianca saw it then, their angle, their ropes, the shape of the push. Not a siege. A grab. For her. Heat and fear braided. She stood before she knew she was standing. Brian caught her again. No, he said. You don't run to danger to prove you're brave. I'm not running, she said, breath jagged. Someone opened the gate to get me. Then let them crawl to their failure. Sparks flared along the wall. Someone tossed burning pitch. Screams rose, cut off by snarls that were the wrong shape to be human. A hunter popped over the parapet right where Lily had been a heartbeat ago, knife flashing. Bianca moved. No plan. Just motion. She grabbed the man's wrist on instinct, twisted the way muscle memory taught her on a gurney when a drunk swung. The knife clattered. He slammed her into the stone anyway. Stars burst in her eyes. His other hand went for her throat. Brian hit him like a door slamming in a storm. There was nothing elegant about it. Only force calibrated. He drove the hunter down, knee on sternum, and with gloved fingers snapped the mask's filter off. The man choked on his own fog. Brian rose, already turning to the next threat. It was the first time Bianca had seen him fight up close. No roar, no show. Just a moving fact. He was a storm that didn't love itself. Back, he said to her, not looking, which made her want to do anything but. A child's shriek knifed from the stairwell below. Bianca vaulted the last step and found a kitchen boy wedged under a fallen shield, eyes wild. Can't breath, he gasped, the metal pinning his chest. Bianca wedged her shoulder under the rim and pushed. The shield didn't budge. 2 more heaves, her vision dimmed. Help, she shouted, voice ripping. Lily and a guard dove in. Together they lifted enough for the boy to wriggle free. He sobbed once, short and shamefaced. You're okay, Bianca said, cupping his cheek. The heat in her palm trickled into him. His ribs loosened their panic. Go. Pantry. Doors shut. He ran. Lily grabbed Bianca's sleeve. You can't keep. I know, Bianca said, not stopping. A crack split the haze, sharper than the bolts. The world slowed. Brian jerked like a string had yanked him. He staggered back into the crenellation, jaw locked. Where? Bianca demanded. He looked down. Not a bolt. A brand. A thin needle of metal buried right under his collarbone, glowing faint, sigils crawling like ants. Silver didn't glow. Magic did. Which work? Lily whispered, color leaving her face. Marcus's mouth curved as if appreciating a sculpture. How unfortunate. Bianca's heart punched her ribs. She pressed both palms to Brian's chest. Heat flooded, found the thing met its wrongness. Pain blew through her like a door. For a moment she wasn't on a wall. She was on stone stairs in moonlight, Brian younger under her hands, blood sliding into the cracks, her own voice saying please to a woman with winter eyes. Don't take this, the old her had begged. Take everything else. Bianca tore back to the present with a ragged breath. I can't pull it, she said. It's barbed. Leave it, Brian ground out. I've carried worse. It's eating you, she snapped. Try again. He caught her wrist, not to stop her, just to remind her where he ended and she began. If you pass out, they take you. They won't, she said and lied like a priest. She focused. Heat concentrated under her palms, finer, more precise, as if her hands were learning to see. The sigils on the needle flared in answer. Her scar burned so bright she thought her skin would split. She pushed anyway, not pulling the metal but pushing its poison into itself until the glow collapsed to a sullen ember. Brian's breath blew out. His hand left her wrist and slid to the back of her neck, steady, not possessive. Good, he said, voice wrecked. Good. A new sound rose from the trees, bells many, thin as glass. Hunters below began to fall back in disciplined pairs. Not defeat. Completion. Bianca followed the angle of their retreat and saw a coil gun being assembled on the forest road. A tripod, a spool of wire that flashed dull like old coins, a lens adjusting for distance. Down, she shouted, pointing. The first shot spidered through the air, a net of woven silver thread. It hit the merlins and collapsed into smoke. The second came a breath later, tighter aim, no warning. It flowered over the rampart like a thrown veil and fell toward the nearest warm body. Bianca stepped without thinking. The net caught her shoulders and cinched like a fist. Silver bit skin through cloth, heat stung up her arms into the old scar. She hit the stones on her knees, breath-wrenching. The wire pulled, alive, dragging her toward the parapet. Bianca, Brian said, no title, no walls, and left the ground. He hit the net midair, fingers tearing at the weave. Smoke seared his skin. The barbed sigil under his collarbone flared and went ugly. Don't, she tried, but the wire yanked again. The spool in the trees whined, hungry. The net lifted, scraping stone, turning her toward the drop. Lily threw herself on Bianca's legs, anchoring with a sound that was mostly fear. A guard jammed a spear into the mesh, trying to pin it. Marcus didn't move. He watched, eyes bright, as if the world was finally arriving on his schedule. The net jerked harder. Bianca's spine kissed open air. The forest roared up at her like a mouth. And from the lower stair, cool as winter slipping under a door, came the sorceress's voice. Run. Power slid over Bianca's skin like ice, slicking her instincts. Her muscles twitched to obey. Brian's hand clamped her jaw, forcing her eyes to his. Ember. Human. Furious. Stay, he said, and this time it wasn't a command, it was a plea. The wire bit. Light exploded behind Bianca's eyes. Chapter 6. The world tilted toward the drop. The net seared Bianca's shoulders as the coil gun reeled her in like prey. For a breath, she felt her muscles twitch toward the witch's command. Run. But Brian's grip on her jaw burned hotter than the silver. His voice cut through the compulsion like flint on steel. Stay. With me. The bond surged. The witch's hold buckled. Bianca gasped, slammed both feet against the wall and for the first time pushed back. Heat licked from her scar down her arms into the net. The wires shivered, then snapped like overstretched bone. The net went slack. Bianca collapsed onto stone, lungs clawing for air. Brian dropped beside her, burned hands smoking where he'd ripped the last threads. Lily sobbed once, muffled in her sleeve. On the forest road below, the coil gun operators froze. Then one screamed. A surge of shadow slammed them flat. The wolves of the fortress had finally spilled over the walls. The hunters broke, scattering like ants under boiling water. The attack ended as quickly as it had begun. But the witch hadn't left. She lingered on the stair, her eyes like cracked ice. "You're waking faster than I planned," she said, voice thin but carrying. "It will kill you." Brian stepped forward, every muscle ready to tear. "You won't touch her again." The witch only smiled. "I don't have to. The temple will." And then she melted into the smoke, leaving the scar on Bianca's skull screaming with heat. Later, the fortress smelled of blood and wolfsbane. Bianca sat on a cot in the infirmary while Lily cleaned her burns. Brian loomed against the wall, shirt torn, the sigilled brand at his collarbone still a dark ember. Bianca finally broke the silence. "The temple. She keeps saying temple." Brian's jaw flexed. "Because that's where it happened. The night you vanished." She looked at him, throat tight. "Tell me." His eyes flicked to Lily, then back. "You were never just human. On your awakening, your power came wild. Too much for one body. You thought it would tear me apart. You begged her to erase it. To erase us." Bianca shook her head, but flashes rattled up. Stone corridors, her own voice whispering please, the press of cold hands on her skull. Tears burned hot. "Why didn't you stop me?" "Because you asked me not to." His voice broke, low and ragged. "And because I thought I'd get you back. Not like this. Not half." Her hands curled on her knees. "So I made myself a stranger. To you. To me. Not a stranger." He stepped closer, shadows carving the sharp lines of his face. "Never that." The room felt too small for her ribs. "If this temple holds what I lost, then I need to see it." Brian's eyes flared. "No. The wards there are poison. Even wolves die crossing them." "Then I go with you," she said, surprising herself with how steady it came out. "I won't sit here waiting for my own memories to kill me." For the first time since dawn, silence filled the space between them. Brian studied her, something torn between fury and reluctant respect. Finally he nodded once, sharp. "At moonrise. We ride." Lily sucked in a breath. "That place. Bianca, it's not just dangerous. It's forbidden. If the council knows." "They won't," Brian said. His gaze never left Bianca. "This is between us." Bianca's scar pulsed, hot and certain. For once, the fear in her chest bent into something else. Resolve. Chapter 7. Moonrise bled over the peaks like a blade. Bianca stood in the fortress stables, her palms damp against the leather reins of a horse that wasn't hers. Every sound, hoof scrape, chain rattle, felt too loud. Brian moved with silent efficiency, strapping saddlebags, checking blades. He looked like a man readying for war, not memory. Lily wrung her hands. "You shouldn't go. The council will smell the lie before you're back." Brian's voice was steel. "Then we won't give them the chance." They rode hard into the pines. The air sharpened with cold and every hoofbeat drummed Bianca's scar. She gritted her teeth until the trees thinned and a clearing opened. Stone pillars cracked and mossed, a sunken stair yawning like a throat. The temple. Her breath caught. She had never been here. And yet her skin remembered. Brian dismounted first, scanning the shadows. "Stay behind me." Bianca obeyed, but each step down the broken stair made her legs shake. Faint runes flickered in the stone, reacting to her presence. She pressed her palm to the wall, and heat shot up her arm, a memory surfacing. Her younger self kneeling right here, whispering, "Take it away." Her chest seized. She stumbled. Brian caught her, steadied her against the wall. "Enough," he said, voice harsh. "It's killing you." But before she could answer, a torch flared at the mouth of the stair. Marcus stepped out, guards at his back, smug as if he'd been waiting all along. "You really think the council doesn't watch its king?" His smile was thin. "Dragging a human into forbidden ground. You've damned your claim, Brian. And hers." Bianca's pulse spiked. "You followed us." "I led you here," Marcus corrected. "The hunters, the net, even the coil gun. All diversions. You two are predictable. Love always is." Brian's growl was low, feral. "You betrayed your own pack." Marcus didn't flinch. "No. I protect it. From weakness. From myths about bonds that ruin kings. You should have taken another mate years ago." The guards moved in. Brian shoved Bianca behind him, shifting half, claws catching torchlight. Steel flashed, wolves snarled. "Stop!" Bianca shouted. The rune-carved walls shuddered with her voice. A wave of heat burst from her scar, knocking dust from the ceiling. For a heartbeat, everyone froze. Even Marcus blinked. Bianca's breath rasped. "You can't bury the past by killing me." Marcus's smile twisted. "No. But I can bury the king by proving your poison." He gestured and 2 guards grabbed Bianca before Brian could stop them. Chains cinched her wrists. Brian lunged, claws raking stone, but 3 more soldiers forced him back with silver pikes. Smoke filled the stairwell. "Take her," Marcus ordered. "The council will see she is no queen, only a curse." Bianca fought but the chains burned. Brian's roar shook the pillars, but even he couldn't break through the wall of blades. The last thing Bianca saw before the smoke swallowed her was his eyes, wild and desperate as the guards dragged her upward. She woke hours later in a stone chamber, wrists raw, alone except for torchlight. The fortress bell tolled 3 times, banishment hour. From beyond the door Marcus's voice carried. "At dawn the council will cast judgment. You'll be exiled to the human border. And when the spell in your skull unravels, it will kill you far from our gates. No one will mourn." Bianca closed her eyes. For the first time since the market she felt utterly hollow. No bond. No future. No way out. But beneath the despair something flickered. A voice, faint as breath, whispered from the scar. "You're not done yet." Chapter 8. The cell walls sweated with damp. Bianca sat on cold stone, chains heavy around her wrists, heartbeat loud in the silence. Every toll of the fortress bell reminded her that dawn, and exile, crept closer. Her scar throbbed. Sometimes it whispered fragments of memory, sometimes only pain. Tonight it hissed louder, a pressure that made her jaw ache. "You asked for this," the voice seemed to say. "You begged her to take it all." She pressed her palms to her skull and whispered back, "Then I want it back." The door groaned. A shadow slipped through, Lily clutching a ring of stolen keys, eyes huge with fear. "Bianca. Get up. We don't have time." Bianca's throat tightened. "Where's Brian?" "Still bound in the council hall. Marcus used silver shackles. They're bleeding him." The thought hollowed her chest. "Then why are you here?" Lily's chin trembled but lifted. "Because you saved me when you didn't have to. Now I save you." She jammed a key into the lock. The shackle clattered open. Bianca stood, wrists raw. "If Marcus finds you." "He won't," Lily said, though her voice shook. "The hunters are massing again. The whole court is distracted." Bianca hesitated, only a heartbeat. "Then we get Brian out." The council chamber smelled of smoke and iron. Brian knelt at the center, silver chains carved into his wrists, collarbone bleeding where the witch's brand still pulsed faintly. Counselors watched from the dais. Marcus prowled at the edge, satisfied as a vulture. "You've let love make you weak," Marcus intoned. "The pack deserves a king, not a man shackled to a ghost." Brian's head rose, eyes amber even through pain. "Better a ghost than a coward hiding behind law." A ripple of disquiet moved through the wolves. Marcus's smile thinned. The doors burst wide. Bianca stumbled in, Lily at her side, hair tangled, face smudged with soot. Guards shouted, blades scraped. Marcus laughed. "Perfect. The curse walks to her judgment." Bianca ignored him. She dropped to her knees at Brian's side, fingers reaching for his chains. The silver bit her skin, sizzling. Pain bloomed, but she held on. "You're not dying here." "Bianca," he rasped. "Shut up," she snapped, teeth gritted. "I've had enough of people deciding for me." Heat surged from her palms into the shackles. Her scar seared like fire, but this time she didn't flinch. She pushed. Light spidered through the silver, cracks glowing, then shattering into shards. The chamber gasped. Brian surged free. In one motion he pulled Bianca against him, half shielding her as guards advanced. "Stand down." Hale barked from the dais, but her voice was drowned by Marcus's roar. "Seize them both." Wolves lunged. Brian moved like a blade, claws flashing, his body a wall around Bianca. She crouched low, heart hammering. A soldier broke past him, sword raised. Bianca didn't think, she flung out her hand. Heat exploded. The blade bent mid-swing, warping into molten slag. The guard screamed, dropping it. Bianca stared at her hand, smoke rising from her palm. The whole chamber recoiled. Even Hale's eyes widened. Marcus hissed. See? A weapon. A curse. Brian's voice was a snarl. No. She's mine. He hauled her upright, eyes burning into hers. For once there was no mask, only raw fear and something deeper. I thought I lost you forever. If I lose you again I won't survive it. Her breath hitched. Brian. The witch appeared in the archway, robes like torn night. You will lose her, she said coldly. Because the bond you cling to will burn her alive. Bianca's knees buckled. The scar flared white hot, dragging her toward blackness. She swayed and Brian caught her just before she fell. Stay with me, he begged, voice breaking. Don't leave me again. Her last thought before the dark took her was not of fear, but of the warmth in his arms, and the terrifying certainty that she belonged there. Chapter 9. Bianca woke to sound, boots, voices, the low thunder of a crowd gathered to judge. She lay on a cloak near the dais, Lily's hand at her shoulder. Brian crouched over her, chains gone but blood drying at his collarbone. The council chamber doors stood open to the courtyard. Half the pack pressed at the thresholds, necks craned, eyes bright. Word of what she'd done had run faster than any bell. Easy, Lily whispered. They moved judgment outside. Hale said the pack should witness. Bianca pushed up on her elbows. The room tilted then steadied. Her scar hummed, hot but not flaring. Across the floor, Marcus stood with a calm that was almost cheerful, the witch at his side like winter wed to law. Matriarch Hale lifted her staff. We will have order. The murmur thinned. Hale's gaze fell on Bianca, then on Brian. Alpha. You broke procedure. You brought a disputed mate into forbidden ground. You set bond above law. Brian rose, slow, every line of him a dare. I set life above law. Marcus's smile showed a little tooth. And risked all our lives for a human who bends steel with her hands. Call it what it is. She is a weapon you cannot control. Bianca stood before Brian could shield her with his body again. Her voice came out rough but it carried. I'm not a weapon. I'm a person. I saved your boy on the stairs. I refused to let a man die because it was convenient. If that's a curse, your law is already broken. A ripple cut through the courtyard. Wolves shifted weight. A few nodded before they remembered not to. Hale's face didn't move. Marcus turned a palm up to the witch. Witness. Tell the pack what she asked of you. The witch's eyes fixed on Bianca. She begged me to erase the bond. I obliged. Had I not, both would have died. The power between you burns too hot for a human body. Brian's voice lowered to something that made Bianca's bones want to obey. You didn't erase it. You buried it. And while she lived half alive, you fed our border to hunters who learned our walls at their leisure. Murmur. Marcus's jaw worked once. Prove that lie. Brian didn't look away from the witch. When the hunters cut our sluice gate, they moved like men who had maps. Not guesses. Marks on stone, the kind drawn by a hand that's been under these roofs. He tipped his chin toward her robe. A hand that can tell a door to open. The witch's smile was delicate. You accuse me of treason because I saved your little love story? How provincial. Lily's voice rose, small but clear. The coil gun net was cast for Bianca. All eyes carved to her, she swallowed but held the line. Every shot aimed where she stood, not at the king, not at the flag. They weren't here for a crown. They were here to drag a girl off a wall. Marcus clapped slowly. And now the scullery sets policy. His gaze slid over the crowd. Wolves, look at your king. Look at the human he drags into our house. Today she bends iron. Tomorrow she burns your pups when her temper slips. Hale's staff struck stone. Enough theatrics. She looked at Bianca, the weight of judgment old in her face. If you are queen, you must hold the pack without destroying it. If you are not, you must go. What do you say for yourself? Bianca's throat went raw and then clear. She stepped forward alone, feeling more naked than she had in the bath. I say your creed, this thing about strength meaning who can hurt more, has been choking you for years. I'm not the first to bleed under it. I won't be the last if you keep it. She lifted her marked palm. I don't remember asking to forget. But I remember what I've done since waking up without a past. I chose people who couldn't help me. I chose mercy when you demanded spectacle. If that is weakness, then you need weaker rulers. The courtyard held its breath. Somewhere on the wall a child coughed, small and human. Brian stepped to her side, and behind her a half-pace the way a shield stands where it is asked. He didn't touch her. He let her be seen. Marcus's voice sharpened. Poetry doesn't change the fact that your body lights like tinder when he looks at you. You will die. And your death will break our king. The witch's fingers twitched, almost a flinch. Bianca felt it more than saw it, the way a room changes when someone decides too late to hide a truth. What kills me, Bianca said softly, eyes never leaving the witch, is a spell, not a bond. The witch's mouth curved without humor. Believe whatever keeps you warm. Bianca took 2 steps toward her. The ring of guards did not move. You told me your magic preserved me. Say it again. Look me in the eye and tell me the spell does not eat me to power itself. Then swear it on the old runes. For a heartbeat the witch's face emptied. She did not swear. Hale's head tilted. The crowd hissed. Brian's body went still beside Bianca, the way trees go still when wind changes. Bianca's pulse hammered. She turned to the gathered wolves, pitched her voice to climb stone. You want proof? Take the ring. She pointed to the dull metal circle still scarring the courtyard. Let it test her truth. Not mine. A sound moved through the pack, sharp, hopeful, afraid. Marcus's smile cracked for the first time. This is absurd. The ring is for bond, not for. It's for truth and will, Hale said. And we used it for both this morning. She lifted a hand. Enforcers rolled the ring forward until it kissed the witch's boots. Hale's eyes cooled. Sepin. Speak. For the first time the witch looked small. No hood, no smoke. She stood inside the lines like a person in a trap she had drawn herself. The sigils woke, sullen. Hale's voice carried. Did you place a spell that feeds on the queen's bond? Silence. Bianca's scar burned like answer. Yes, the witch said at last as if tearing cloth from her own mouth. Murmurs cracked into shouts. She went on fast, trying to control the fire she'd lit. Because power like hers kills without harness. Because a dead queen is no queen at all. And did you sell our borders for hunter's silver to keep your leash tight? Brian asked, quiet enough the question sounded like an intimacy. The witch's eyes flicked just once toward Marcus. And the ring flared white. Roaring washed over the courtyard. Wolves, human voices, the sound of something rotten finally named. Marcus stepped back, then forward, then tried a smile that no longer found purchase. Lies in heat, he said quickly. Magic pollutes measures. Hale raised her staff. The courtyard fell, if not silent, then listening. Seize the witness, she said. Guards moved, slowly at first, then with purpose. The witch did not fight. She watched Bianca with a look Bianca could not read, something like pity's sick cousin. Marcus spun for the exit. Brian moved before anyone else did. One stride, a hand at the advisor's collar, a pull that set Marcus on his knees. Your maps, Brian said, voice like stone on stone. Your gates. Your nets. Marcus laughed. A thin, breathless sound. You can't prove my hand on the rope. You just did, Lily said, surprising herself as much as anyone. She held up a key ring, the same she'd used to free Bianca. You left this in the coil gun crate. The kitchen saw you there. A dozen heads nodded before they could swallow it. Courts ran on fear. Kitchens ran on truth. Marcus's calm shattered. She's a human, he spat, jabbing a finger at Bianca. She'll burn you all to ash. Bianca lifted her palm, the crescent scar faintly aglow. Not fire, not threat. Warmth. Or I'll burn the spell that chained me and choose to stay. Hale's gaze flicked between Bianca and Brian, then beyond them to the pack that would live with whatever this morning became. Law was written by wolves who survived winters, she said finally. Perhaps we are in another kind of winter. She lowered the staff. One test remains. Not ring, not pain. Pack. She pointed to the crowd. Who here will stand behind a queen who defines strength as protection, not cruelty? Silence thickened, then broke in a single clean sound. The boy from the stairs stepped forward, ankle still wrapped, chin high. I will, he said, voice shaking and sure. She saved me when no one else looked. Another wolf advanced, an archer with raw eyes. Then a guard. Then 3 more. It wasn't a roar. It was a tide. Marcus looked around and finally saw a truth he couldn't out-talk. You'll die by mercy, he hissed. Maybe, Bianca said. But not today. Hale lifted her staff to make a decree. And a scream knifed from the inner hall. A soldier stumbled in, face white. Gate breach, south tunnel. Hunters inside the lower nursery. The pack spun as one. Brian was already moving. He looked back just once, eyes on Bianca, speaking a word without his mouth. Choose. Bianca didn't hesitate. She grabbed Lily's hand, vaulted the steps, and ran toward the sound that mattered. Chapter 10. The nursery tunnels were chaos. Smoke poured from the southern arch, thick with wolfsbane. Children's cries echoed, sharp and panicked. Guards fought to form a line, but hunters in masks had already broken through, shadows with blades aimed at the youngest of the pack. Bianca ran harder than she ever had. Lily stumbled after her, coughing, clutching her sleeve. At the tunnel mouth, Brian slammed through the smoke, claws out, a storm of fury. He ripped 2 hunters from the doorway and hurled them aside, but more kept coming. Get them out, he barked at the guards. All of them. Bianca dropped beside a boy no older than 8, trapped under splintered timber. He braced, shoved. Her arms shook, lungs burning, but she forced it up. The child crawled free, sobbing. Her scar burned white-hot and she felt the surge again, heat flowing out of her palms into the boy's tiny chest. His sobs eased. He clung to her hand like a lifeline. A shadow lunged, Hunter's blade raised. Bianca turned too late. Brian was there, intercepting with his body. Steel cut across his shoulder, shallow but bleeding. He whirled, broke the attacker's mask, drove him into the stone. His eyes found Bianca's in the haze. I will bleed before you do, they said without words. The witch stepped from the smoke like it belonged to her. Her voice carried, cold and certain. You can't save them all. The bond burns her from the inside, Alpha. Claim her and she dies. Let her go and she lives. The world seemed to tilt. Guards hesitated, wolves' eyes darting between their king and the pale woman who had haunted their laws. Bianca's chest heaved. She's lying. The witch smiled thin. Then prove me wrong. Touch him. Claim him before your pack. Show them it doesn't kill you. Marcus, dragged in chains by 2 guards, spat blood and laughed. Do it. Tear yourself apart in front of them. Give them a corpse for a queen. The pack's eyes fixed on her. On Brian. Waiting. Judging. Brian looked at Bianca and for the first time his armor cracked fully. Fear. Not of the witch. Not of Marcus. Fear of her loss. His voice was hoarse. I won't force you. Not again. If you walk away now, I'll guard you from a distance until my last breath. Bianca's throat closed. The children pressed against her legs, eyes wide, waiting too. She remembered the council ring, the boy she saved on the stairs, Lily's faith, Brian's hands steady through every storm. Her chest lifted. I'm done running from myself. She stepped into Brian's space. The pack held its breath. Bianca raised her palm, scar glowing faint as ember, and set it against his heart. The bond detonated. Heat surged, not burning but belonging. Power arced through both of them, gold and alive, rushing outward in a shockwave that slammed hunters into stone, snuffed the witch's smoke and carved a circle of clarity around the nursery. Children stopped crying. Wolves dropped to one knee, instinct bowing to something older than law. The witch shrieked, staggering back. The brand on Brian's chest cracked and fell like ash. Marcus screamed curses until a guard struck him silent. Bianca gasped, waiting for death, but the heat steadied, settled. The scar at her skull cooled, no longer a wound but a seal. She met Brian's gaze through tears. I choose you. Not because fate wrote it. Because I do. Brian's face broke. Relief, awe, something he'd buried for years. He caught her, pulled her against him, but not to shield her. To stand with her. Then hear me, he said, turning to the pack. His voice rolled like thunder. Your queen. The courtyard beyond the tunnels erupted, not in rebellion but in a roar of acceptance. Wolves howled, the sound climbing into the night like a vow. The witch spat her last venom. Mercy will rot you. Bianca lifted her chin, arms still tight around Brian. No. Mercy saved us. The guards dragged the witch and Marcus away, their voices swallowed by the pack's cry. The book. Days later, Bianca stood in the same courtyard where she had first been dragged in chains. This time she wore no shackles. Children ran at her feet. Lily smiled at her side. The boy she had saved pressed a wildflower into her palm. Brian stepped beside her. He took her hand openly. The pack bowed as one not to law but to choice. And for the first time Bianca felt whole. Tell me your favorite moment from this story, and don't forget to tell me where you're watching from. Like, share and subscribe to my channel for more werewolf romance story.